Hi, everybody. Here is the March first waivers report. So I did put this out already in written format, but I just wanted to talk about kind of the vibe of March, right? So we talked a lot about February because February was this like massive month in terms of activations. Talked about the Chinese New Year, the fire horse energy, which is not disappointing in terms of rapid fire here. Of course, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries. The new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius. Like, we were a little bit battered, I think, coming out of that huge energy week, the event week. For a lot of you, for myself included, it seemed like everything changed. Like, we knew it was going to be big. You know, I think that that's the irony as like astrologers sometimes is we know what's coming in a sense. Like, we can very much read the room of the cosmic energy. We can look at our own charts and know where these activations and these transits are going to occur. And so we feel like we're prepared, but that's kind of why I tend to stay away from predictive astrology. I think predictive astrology is super cool. And some astrologers are really good at it. And I have like general senses of what I can see, like vision wise. I know where certain trends are going to go. We know certain events are kind of inevitable to happen, but I'm always surprised. Like, even if I'm aware, I'm prepared, you know, like it's always surprising. And that's why I love the stars, because we don't have control. That's a very North Node Pisces, South Node Virgo energy that we have right now. It's like South Node Virgo, right? No matter how much information you have, no matter how much planning you do, no matter how like on point you think you are with keeping up with everything and making sure everything's taken care of, the North Node in Pisces is going to always remind us it doesn't fucking matter. Like, you just cannot control the way things unfold. And that makes life interesting. We're always going to get surprised. So I will tell you that I'm obviously doing this post the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo, which was on the 3/3 portal. We had Mars move into Pisces the day before that eclipse, creating this massive Pisces stellium, right? That was in opposition to this eclipse. I really thought that I was going to get through that eclipse without getting rocked. I really, really thought that I was. I have a lot of Virgo placements. So for those of you that also have a lot of Virgo placements, you might have felt the same way. We had another big full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo last March. And that one was tough. That one was probably the toughest eclipse I've ever been through. So I really thought this one, like, I was gonna nail it. It got me anyways. A lot of physical purging. I went through like a little bit of, you know, the typical throat lymphatic system purging and whatnot. That eclipse was intense. And in hindsight, you know, we're a few days out now. In hindsight, looking at it, I understand. I get it. A lot of what was activated in February, right, under all of those like amazing epic transits, when we have such big energy, right, we have such big activations, we have such a visceral shift in energy, inevitably things are going to fall apart and go awry, right? And because whatever is no longer matching and resonating with the new energy is going to immediately kind of be triggered, or is going to immediately kind of show itself, right? And that is what that full moon lunar eclipse did in Virgo. Remember, Virgo is the details. Virgo is the little things. Virgo is the one who looks at what is working and what is not working. That is practically speaking, okay? To Virgo, there's no point in having information and knowledge and wisdom if it's not being practically applied, right? So a lot of people I've been seeing widespread issues around electricity, power outages, appliances breaking, cars not working suddenly, technology not working suddenly. Again, this is very South Node Virgo. She's like, this isn't working, like physically not working. This is actually not sustainable. And so I feel like, and with, again, a massive stellium in Pisces opposing this eclipse, it was like there's no control over it. These things are just going to happen, right? And we have to let that process play out, because what the Pisces Virgo energy has been doing for us in the last year is illuminating this, right? It's illuminating where things can no longer sustain. Things are not working. Things need to be fixed, resolved, changed, etc. And the Pisces energy has inevitably pulled us down this road of stop trying to control the process. Also, stop, I think, changing our perspective in a way, because Pisces has this gift of looking at things from the higher perspective. And so a lot of the things I noticed as well that might have come up for you or for anybody during this eclipse was, don't take it as something is wrong. You know, I think that is the shadow of Virgo, is that we think when something's not working, when something needs to be fixed, when something's no longer sustainable, sometimes Virgo can lock onto those details and be like, well, where did I go wrong? What happened? I need to fix this so that this never happens again, kind of thing. And, you know, there's wisdom in that, like learning from your mistakes, wisdom. But at the same time, we have to realize that a lot of times things that happen that seem outside of our control, we might try to analyze it and be like, why did this happen? Where did I go wrong? But ultimately, we have to see that as this actually saved us from something worse. You know, that sometimes these events actually happen and they seem like it's such an inconvenience in the moment, or it's so big and so overwhelming in the moment, but it actually is course correcting us in a way that we can't see. And so whatever transpired through this last lunar eclipse, this was the final like healing moment. This was the final shedding of like what is no longer going to sustain, and see that as a gift. Because as we're, you know, I can't believe we're like, and we're at the end of the first week of March. Like, time is not real. We are in the month of rebirth. Okay, so I've been talking a lot about this. I talked about this in my seminars last month with the Phoenix path getting activated. The Phoenix energy has been really strong coming through, of just like, this is the year where, you know, again, I think in the Pisces era, we were always looking at ascension, awakening, etc. as a group endeavor, right? It was a humanity-wide, collective-wide endeavor. And that's why in much of the Pisces era, I think first wavers, second wavers spent a lot of time trying to wake people up, right? Trying to share truth, trying to help other people, trying to spread information, knowledge, wisdom, right? Trying to get everybody in the same boat. That's very Piscean, right? And in this Aries era, it's no longer a kind of group endeavor, okay? It's no longer a collective journey. It is in the bigger sense, right? In the macro sense, everything is one. So it is, but on the micro level and in our individual experience, this is about you as an individual. This is about you walking through the Phoenix path. And the Phoenix path, right, is the Phoenix knows, right? The myth and the lore and the legend of phoenixes are super cool. But the lore and the myth of the Phoenix is they almost intuitively know when their time has come, when the particular journey that they've been on, the particular path has come to an end. And so what do? They burn themselves down into ash, and then they rebirth themselves and they begin anew. That is exactly what we're doing. And this month is the month of the kind of beginnings of that. The first half of March is very much the burning yourself into ash sort of feeling. Again, massive Pisces stellium happening. Okay. Now today, we do have Venus and Aries. I'm super thrilled about that. I'll tell you why. So we have the sun in Pisces. We have Mercury retrograde in Pisces. We have Mars in Pisces. We have also had Venus in Pisces and the North Node in Pisces. So heavy Piscean energy. Again, I've kind of shared this before. The irony about water, right? Pisces is a water sign, is we tend to think of water as this like, in Western astrology, it is a feminine element. It's a yin element. So we tend to think of water as this soft, flowing, ethereal, emotional, intuitive element, which it is. However, I think we need to really understand water for what it is. Okay. Pisces rules the deep ocean, the unknown, if you will, right? We have only explored 5% of our oceans. That is a fact. Because as we know, the deeper you go down into the ocean, the pressure becomes too great for a human vessel, and sometimes even for manufactured vessels, right? Like submarines or whatever they have these days. You get to a certain depth and the pressure is so intense that you can implode. We also know, right, that what we call space, firmament, is likely water. So Pisces kind of rules the depth of water, and which mostly is unknown. And that is Pisces, right? It's completely unknown. Water is heavy. Water is intense. Water creates pressure, right? Think of a pipe bursting. Think of water carving through rock. Water is intense. And so we have to reframe how we view water, because when we see this Pisces stellium, right? Yeah, we have the normal kind of, stereotypical jokes of like, oh, we're all lost in the sauce, no clue what's going on. We might feel very low energy, very like we just kind of want to relax, be in stillness. That is true. But we're also forgetting that water is heavy. And this heaviness has really created, again, this overlay between the Piscean era, the Aries era, where the Aries energy, the fire horse energy is like go, 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 go. But we're like heavy right now. Now, today, Venus has moved into Aries. So I'm very thrilled about that, because as Saturn and Neptune have made that conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries, the world axis, the inception point, right? They've almost created a portal, right? I gave this analogy last time, I think. The Piscean era, we were all in the womb together, right? We're all in the cosmic womb together. We're going through a massive healing and unraveling of the previous eons. And as we pass over the world axis, the inception point, we are each now essentially being rebirthed into a new self, into a new being. And so every planet that now crosses over that world axis point, that archetype is going through a rebirth, right? Is moving through this new portal. And so the first to go over this inception point is Venus. And she represents the feminine energy. And of course, this is so symbolic of as above, so below. The feminine energy always goes first. Always. That is the architecture of creation. The feminine energy is the baseline. The feminine energy always begins. She is always first, contrary to popular beliefs. Okay. So Venus being the first to move through this portal doesn't surprise me. It is the architecture of creation, right? Funny enough, Mars, right, will be the last inner planet to go through the portal. The masculine energy. Again, that is the architecture of creation. So Venus being the feminine, and everyone has feminine energy. So this is not just about feminine vessels, although feminine vessels will definitely be feeling this on a much more deeper level, right? Venus in Aries, she is now rebirthing herself. The feminine energy is now going through the rebirth process first. I talked about this in a recent article. The feminine have such a long history of atrocity. Okay, and again, this goes for the inner feminine energy of masculine as well. The feminine energy on the planet has had the most atrocities than any other species, to be honest. The earth herself is a feminine vessel, Mother Earth. We live in a feminine paradigm. So enslavement, suppression, violence, just so much kind of siphoning of the feminine energy as well. Venus in Aries today, she promises that the feminine energy is getting rebirthed. And this is funny because as I talked about, I did a video the other day on my personal YouTube channel, so you guys can watch that if you wish to. In Chinese feng shui, right? I talked all about period 9, which we're in for the next 20 years, is a fire element period. This is the first fire element period we've had in 160 years, okay? It's a big deal. Now, in Chinese feng shui, the fire element is related to females, to the mother, to the feminine, to the matriarchal energies. In Western astrology, the fire element is yang. It's masculine. So I do feel, again, there is going to be a coherence as we move forward that starts to come in between anywhere where there's a division or a polarity, right? So between Eastern and Western practices, there's going to have to be a cohesiveness between ancient practices and modern practices. Like there's going to come a balance of everything. I do resonate with fire being more feminine in nature. They've told us it's masculine, but it makes sense that it's actually feminine, right? So I think the feminine warrior essences are going to start coming back, right? The rebirthing that's happening this month. I've been talking a lot about my focus on archetypal astrology moving forward, which is to truly understand your core archetypes and how those archetypes are evolving, right? Because I think all the archetypes are evolving. Astrology is evolving, we're evolving, everything is evolving. There's also new archetypes that will be activated within ourselves, new archetypes we have not embodied yet. Okay. And that's really going to start peaking in the rebirth process when we get to the spring equinox, which is the rebirth kind of gateway here. But today, for the next 2 weeks, Venus is the first to start this process. And so we have to get back in tune with the true feminine essence. Feminine were never naturally submissive, quiet, or, these just kind of like weak beings that they've kind of told us we were and made us to be. The feminine is fucking fire. And she is the fire of creation. And so the feminine warrior energy is really going to start coming in, reviving the true natural state of feminine energy. Now, next week, we also have Jupiter going direct in Cancer. Cancer's the mother archetype. Jupiter is also a motherly archetype. So a huge, when Jupiter goes retrograde, because she transits about every 13 months, right? The goddess energy. And for like half the time she's retrograde and like half the time she's direct, right? She's direct more often than not. But the thing is she is the elephant in the room. Jupiter is something you can't ignore. She's a big girl, right? She's the elephant in the room. So when she's direct, we're all looking outside at the world and looking at the elephants in the room. We have to address those elephants. Not only that, she gives us the cheat code of like, hey, lean into this. It's right here in front of you. Focus on this, embody this, right? And she also highlights the elephants in the room that need to be addressed and taken care of. When that goes retrograde, I feel we turn that internal. We have to look at the elephants inside. We have to lean into that energy internally. So Jupiter's been retrograde in Cancer for quite some time, since last year in the fall. And so we had to address the inner mother wounds. We had to address the inner wounds of where we were not taking care of ourselves. We were not nurturing. We were cold. We were harsh on ourselves. We were not taking the time to actually love ourselves and to focus, right, on what is directly around us. The most important things and people in our life, right? Not to get too lost in the outer world. Jupiter and Cancer putting a huge, as she goes direct, right? Huge spotlight on women and children. That is part of the big conversation, right? With the Epstein files and everything else is we have created a world that is not safe for women and children. It's just not. And we're going to see further conversations about this. We're going to see further conversations about kind of moving back into a real feminine-based society where we care for each other, right? Where we get out of this hell that we've created, unfortunately, under patriarchal rule. But Jupiter direct in Cancer also brings a lot of blessings. So if you've been having a lot of struggles within yourself, with self-love, self-care, with family, in your home, right? There will be some forward movement. There will be some new blessings to come with that. And this is where we get to the middle of March and the vibe starts to shift a little. We do have a new moon in Pisces on March 18th. That is kind of our final kiss goodbye, I think, in Pisces. We're setting a new stage. We want to have a new relationship with Pisces, especially wherever that may be in your chart. We're ending a very long era of Neptune especially, but also Saturn and the North Node and blah, blah, blah. We're doing a final like kiss goodbye with Pisces, and we're gaining a new relationship with it. We're setting a new intention of how to work with that energy, with our intuition, with our sense of oneness, with our feeling centers. And that is kind of the final little piece of the puzzle, where just days later, we do have the gateway of the spring equinox, which begins on the 20th. I always celebrate the equinoxes and the solstices on the 21st, but basically that weekend, right? Mercury will go direct right under the spring equinox. Blessings, okay? Thank God. There is a moment of clarity here. There is a moment of your rebirthed self as the sun, remember, the equinox, right, is the sun crossing into Aries. The sun is our essences, our life force energy, our sense of who we are. The sun will be the next to cross over that world axis point. We are being rebirthed. Whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not, we are being rebirthed. And this is going to be a huge, huge gateway. And this is, again, going to set us up for April, the month of acceleration. We will have a parade of 7 planets in Aries. That's a lot of energy. That's a lot of action. So this is the month where we're getting our bearings. I talked about this earlier this year. March was kind of this middle month between the big activation and the acceleration, where we're getting our bearings. We are coming into our own. We're coming into our sense of self. We're wrapping up the old. It's a lot of transitions. And one thing I did want to mention, right, is Neptune and Aries. So we already can see a lot of the ramifications of Saturn and Aries, right? We're seeing huge escalations of war. Saturn is a malefic. Aries rules military and war. Okay. It is what it is. However, don't forget that Saturn is karmic. So a lot of what we're seeing play out in the world right now will have karmic consequences. Karma always comes when she comes. And so we are seeing this kind of huge, unfolding, right, of a lot of this Aries dominating energy, especially with Saturn there, that will get reeled back at a certain point, okay? But nonetheless, with Neptune in Aries, something that is kind of maybe a hot topic to talk about, but Neptune is consciousness, okay? Neptune is energy. When Neptune was in Pisces, I felt like that was when a lot of kind of spiritual warfare, if you will, was very subtle. It was hidden. The layers of Pisces and Neptune make it so that you can't quite see where something is coming from. It's blurred. So there was a lot of spiritual warfare going on, but it was very hidden. It was very blurry. And a lot of it was happening more so on the etheric or energetic plane, right? Again, things we're not really seeing. Aries is very physical. Aries is the seed of physicality. It is the birth. It is in your face. It is for you to see. You can touch it, you can taste it, you can smell it, you can see it. And it's very obvious, right? Aries isn't a subtle sign. It's very in your face, very assertive, very obvious, and very physical. So the spiritual warfare game is changing. It is now going to be very obvious, but it also might be more aggressive. And so this month I am going to be talking a little bit about this because I think it is important to address. Again, the elephant in the room, right? So the seminars that we're doing this month, I'll just quickly talk about those before I move into just a few things I wanted to share about the Neptune and Aries thing. So I will be hosting the New Earth Activation Seminar tomorrow on March 7th. We have been for almost a year now, I think, maybe 9 months. We've been working on activating grids, ley lines, both etheric and physical, and activating kind of physical locations around the world who hold a certain vibrational energy, trying to bring every location into its divine alignment, into its proper expression, right? So we've been doing that for like 9 months. This will be the last one where we're doing a grid activation, ley line activation, and kind of trying to bring a coherence, right, to a lot of the locations around the world. Locations are important. Locations hold energy. Land holds energy. Okay, there's grids, there's ley lines. I probably will move into talking more about stargates. Those will become important. I'm sure many of you have maybe read, there's some great channelers out there who have been talking about the particular war going on at the minute, and that spiritually speaking, it is over a stargate. Yes. So I might move into talking more about that, but this is going to be our last grid activation. So for those of you who want to join us, we'll be doing that tomorrow on the 7th. In our Cosmic Coherence Seminar this month, I will be talking about spiritual warfare. I will be talking about all of the modalities, all of the tools. These are things you have to incorporate. We would love to live in a world where, again, it's balance, right? You have to understand the shadows to live in the light. If you ignore the shadows, if you deny the shadows, if you pretend that they don't exist, and you try to live wholly in the light, right, like the love and light bubble, you will get wrecked. You will get absolutely wrecked. Now, if you focus only on the shadow, then again, you are giving it too much energy. You know, where attention goes, energy flows. So it's a balance, but you have to understand the problem in order to have a solution. You have to understand the game that's being played in the shadows in order to live in the light, in order to to work for the light, if you will, in order for your light to be so potent and powerful that it heals the shadows, that it has a greater impact. I'm going to be discussing that. We're also going to do a mass group etheric surgery. I'm sure many of you have joined me in those. I did those for many years. They're really great. They are just a way that we intentionally go in and make sure that we're clearing all distortions from our energy fields, our spiritual bodies, our etheric bodies, working with the galactics. These are just things that we have to do regularly in order to ensure that we are clear of distortions, we are taking care of our vessels the best way we possibly can. So that's what I'm going to cover in that particular seminar. And then at the end of the month, I'll be hosting the April astrology gathering, and we're going to talk about the acceleration month. April is huge as well, of course. 7 planets in Aries. Uranus will also be officially entering Gemini. That is another game changer. So we'll talk about that. So back to just kind of going over here, the spiritual warfare energy, right? So one of the things is that Aries rules the warrior, right? So we know that. And so the warrior energy, we need to understand archetypes, because traditionally the warrior is one who is engaged in war, violence or warfare, etc. But there is also a warrior energy, right? This is the Libra Aries axis. Aries being the warrior, Libra being the peacekeeper. Now, this is a story for another day, but the funniest part of it all is that the polarities of these axes, right, always have to come into balance. And the truth is that Libra is actually one of the greatest warriors, because Libra is the strategy. Libra is the tactics and the strategy. Aries is simply the vessel going out to enact it. You need both. You have to have both. If the warrior runs blind into the war, into the battle, they will likely lose. You have to balance it with Libra, which is the strategy and is the tactics. And Libra's goal is always to maintain balance and to maintain peace and to maintain some kind of justice. And I think that when we look at that opposing axis of Libra, that is what's going to be coming into the warrior energy of Aries, okay? All of these polarities, right? Aries, Libra, Taurus, Scorpio, Gemini, Sag, Cancer, Capricorn, Leo, Aquarius, Virgo, Pisces. They all have to come into balance. We cannot live in polarity anymore. And so we have to learn how to be the peaceful warrior as well, right? Like the book, The Art of War, right? It talks about how not having to fight and not having to battle is actually the greatest way to win. That is kind of where we're at as well. So that's going to be something that I think really comes in as a new archetype, right? It's like, this is the way that we actually win. It's not a competition, but, to win through peace is a great feat. And that's something that we're going to explore when talking about the Neptune Aries and the kind of spiritual warfare energy, right? So I did pull a few cards just about the vibe, right, of the month. This is such an interesting month. And so the first cards that came out, this is both from my astrology decks. And so the first card that came out was this last quarter moon card in Capricorn, Leave the Past Behind. Very much the theme, again, of especially the first 2 weeks of March here. The past is ending, right? Last quarter moon. It's the final letting go. And it's interesting that this is a last quarter moon in Capricorn card, right? Because we had Pluto in Capricorn for 20 years. What are we leaving behind? So many things. But I think one of the biggest things with South Node Virgo ending the Pluto Capricorn era. I talked about this in my period 9 video. We've had so many periods that were wood and earth based. There was such an emphasis on constant productivity. This delusion that if we don't work ourselves to the ground, if we do not literally die to work and to make money and to live and to accomplish things and to be successful, we are not worthy people. And again, this is why the feminine era and the fire era is so important, is that worth is not equal to productivity. And also that life is meant to be holistic. And that is also something that came under this Virgo moon. Life is meant to be holistic. And, you know, the word holistic actually starts with an H, but I think it should start with a W. It should be WHOLE. Holistic. Everything in your life should be balanced and whole. Because when it's not, then we're living an inorganic life. And I talked a lot about synthetic versus inorganic, right? So I think with that energy, we have to leave behind a lot of the old ways we were doing things. And this is part of the rebirth. This is part of the new archetypes. We're going to find our own way. We are going to find our own unique way of doing things individually, collectively, as societies, as community. The next one was a first quarter moon in Capricorn. Unleash your kindest self. I think that's also very important in the world that we're living in right now. Kindness is a currency. I'm telling you. Take it from a Libra. Being kind, being gracious, forming good connections and relationships to others, it is what makes the world go round. And I think that in the face of what we're facing, that is kind of a great rebellion, is to keep your joy and keep your kindness. And the last one of that deck was a new moon in Libra, of course. And the message was knowing that you're loved. And I think that that's also an important thing to remember, is that everybody is based in unconditional love. Everybody is loved. Even if you don't necessarily feel that in your everyday life, it's to remember that. To remember that nothing is happening to you, it is happening for you. And we are in a very co-creative process with the universe right now. Now, the next cards were very interesting. This is my other astrology deck. So the first one that came out was Vesta. She's an asteroid. And the progressions card. Okay. Vesta is the hearth. If I were to sum up Vesta, she is the feminine fire, okay? She's not out there burning things to the ground necessarily, but she is the hearth. She is the fire within. She is the home fire. She keeps the hearth, the foundation, the warmth going, okay? Now, if you look at the lore of Vesta being discovered, they call her 4 Vesta. The number 4 relates to Cancer. The number 4 relates to the home, the community, the foundations. The number 4, it relates to protection. Like if you get 444 a lot, angel numbers, right? I think our angels all communicate with us differently. So, you know, sometimes you might get repeated number codes and you might be having a certain thought at the time or whatever. Our angels like to communicate in different ways. So those numbers might mean something special to you. For me, they always meant divine protection. Cancer. She is the protector. She is the mother bear. Okay? She keeps everybody. She is the real protector and provider, if we want to get into it. Okay. Vesta, progressions, meaning there's a journey happening. There's a karmic arc happening. So I looked up where Vesta was today. She's at 27 degrees Aquarius. Guess who is in a square to Vesta? Uranus at 28 degrees Taurus, 27, 28 degrees. Vesta is in the late degrees of Aquarius. So this tells me that Vesta which I hadn't looked where she was during the new moon solar eclipse in Aquarius. But this means that Vesta was involved with the new moon solar eclipse at 28 degrees Aquarius. Okay? She's trying to bring us back. Again, she's feminine. She's feminine, but she's fire. It is a resurgence. It is a resurgence of the true nature of reality. And it starts with the resurgence of the original code of creation, the original essence of what feminine energy is and how we use it, and how we respect it, and how we care for it. Okay? And she's squaring Uranus and Taurus right now. So again, Uranus and Taurus, we've talked a lot. I'm going to, do some more videos on this because it's kind of my rabbit hole right now, but finances, resources, money. Uranus at these critical degrees of Taurus, which he will be until the end of April when he moves into Gemini. We're going to crack this code. We're going to crack the code on what real abundance, prosperity, the flow of resources is supposed to be. So I also see Uranus and Taurus squaring Vesta in Aquarius, right? The collective is under her influence right now of returning to the inner hearth, the feminine fire within. And that is going to crack the current systems that we live under in terms of finances and resources, which are not designed to benefit humanity. They are not designed, they're not working in feminine energy, right? And again, you just see all these coincidences, right? It's like all of our terms for money involve water. Water is a feminine element. But the systems of money have no feminine energy whatsoever. They're completely linear and masculine based. That's going to change, right? So keep an eye on Vesta. She's telling us something here. The other cards that came through, so the conjunction card, right? So conjunction in astrology means, two planets are having a relationship. They are meeting up. Their energies are melding, intertwining. They are working together. So it tells us that this energy, Vesta, conjunct, working with, okay? Scorpio. Third house. So Scorpio, Phoenix, rising from the ashes, okay? I don't know. I'm just getting a lot of symbology and analogies with shit lately. The Phoenix path. What's happening with Vesta is she's working with this Phoenix energy. We are rebirthing ourselves from the ashes. We are probably, what it feels like to me is we're going through, I talked about this last month too, this alchemical process within, right? It is changing the internal architecture. This is us burning ourselves down and rising from the ashes and rebirthing. There is a new architecture happening. It's happening on an energy level. It's probably happening on a very biological level. And the third house, communication, our thoughts, our ideas, the way we think, the way we put things out into the world, the way we socialize and connect with one another, right? So this also means, to me, that you're going to start hearing the feminine energy more. It's going to get louder. It's going to get more assertive. It's going to get a little bit more fiery. Again, this is not just for women. This is inner masculine as well. The fire's coming. And I think it's also going to change the way that we all communicate. If we think about the cross of the sleeping phoenix, which is dawning this year and coming into fruition 2027, our new incarnation cross after 400 years, okay? One of the gene keys of that cross is gene key 59, the dragon genome, which also happens to be a Virgo gene key, by the way, which tells me that the Virgo archetype is very different than I think what we think it is. But nonetheless, the shadow of that gene key is dishonesty. And the Siddhi is transparency. There is an element that things, like I said, Neptune and Aries, spiritual warfare being much more in your face. This is very much the same connotation, I guess, is there's going to be more transparency. We are going to start being able to physically and energetically read when things are not aligned, when people or things or whatever are not being transparent and honest. There's no more delusion, right? That was the Pisces. They could hide it, they could spin it, they could tell a story, we could believe it. That's not the case anymore. Everything is going to be obvious. And this is going to change the game in terms of how we communicate with each other, how we express ourselves, how we navigate the world. And so thought those were really interesting themes to come in March. Very interesting month. And again, in my astrology sessions now, I am focusing more on archetypes, story arcs. So not only the evolution of your current archetypes, but your new archetypes. So again, for those of you who are like interested, really guided in that, I do have those sessions up on the website. But happy March, you guys. It's going to be a wild month. It's probably going to be a wild fucking year, but it'll be interesting nonetheless. I do feel it's time. I think we're all ready for something new. We're ready to come into our own in this really beautiful and like stabilizing way of really knowing who we are for the first time, and being able to embody that and live from that place. That is like real freedom. So happy March. I love you all, and I'll see you next month.